Men are blind. And I'm making this video for all the single ladies or for all the ladies that are in a relationship with men but somehow cannot seem to communicate or cannot seem to understand their actions. Because it can be tiring, it can be incredibly tiring to feel you want to communicate something but it just doesn't land, or it feels like he doesn't listen. He listens, but he's blind. Now, before I explain why he's blind, because in this video, I really want to explain from a man with a man's mind and a man's eyes, I want to explain to you how they are looking towards reality so that you can navigate the dynamics better. And at the same time, I want to give you in this video a way to clearly communicate to a man with a man's mind. Not like communicating in a way that even before you are getting angry or irritated, you are able to, with clarity, express what is in your intention and what is in your highest desire in a way that he is like, oh, I understand. So why do I find this important and why do I have this knowledge? I kind of stumbled on this in a very beautiful, profound way, because 11 years ago I was a man with a man's mind that was going to university, that had a lot of insecurity, a lot of logical thinking, a lot of thinking in general. And I stumbled upon a beautiful study and knowledge. It was originally actually on dating, but luckily I found immediately the right teachers. Shout out to RSD, they're not existing anymore, unfortunately. But the teachers are still doing their own thing. I'm so happy I immediately went to those teachers. And what I started doing is I started to become a more attractive man. But what is a truly attractive man? A truly attractive man is not someone that is maybe smooth in his conversation and knows a thing or two, but as soon as you kind of get to know him, he's full of shit. That's not truly attractive, in my opinion. A truly attractive man is someone who is funny, is in his energy, but is also respectful towards a woman, that is able to hold a woman in its fullest admiration and respect, and at the same time holds himself in his fullest admiration and respect. And in this way he can with clarity approach someone who he likes and clearly communicates his desires, but also is clearly seeing your desires in the process and in the moment, and is able to give distance when you need distance, and is able to engage when you want him to engage. There's way more in that, but I was very lucky to find immediately really great teachers in a field that can be kind of shady. So I started learning this, and I started learning emotional intelligence. I started learning meditation. I started learning to go out being sober, because then you really start understanding how it works. Because yeah, if you had a fun night and you had some alcohol and you met some women, okay, that's all fun, but you had no clue how it happened, and you probably forgot half of the evening. So I started learning to go out sober, meditating, emotional intelligence, body language, voice, tonal voice language, eye contact, which I was very bad at. I was never able to look you in the eye. I was always going there or there. I even at one time, I had a beautiful girlfriend, and at one point her father said to me, "Why aren't you looking me in the eye?" And it was just pure insecurity and just not knowing, and not knowing to hold myself. And fast forward from that insecure, not knowing what to do place to a couple years later, I was able to speak with women in a very beautiful, respectful way. And whenever we went deeper and we started to create a relationship together, they were always amazed with how much I knew about them, and they were, oh my God, why aren't more men like this? And they felt so respected and valued by me, and me trying to understand emotions and me trying to understand their perspective. And it was such a win-win. And what I started noticing was, oh my God, I was so blind before I started to create such a decision. I was so blind to, and I'm gonna tell you how blind it is, that, and I think most men that do not have a conscious decision to train their emotional intelligence, to train their awareness on body language and voice, and to train their awareness in general, they will look at the world like this. And I hope I can clearly communicate to a woman's mind how men are seeing the world, so that you understand that you're living in a completely different world. And that most of the time where you thought he was not listening, he was actually listening, but he was completely blind to the information, or deaf to the information. So you might be like, why isn't he listening? Why isn't he getting the message? But he's truly not able to get the message because he didn't train to listen to such messages. But the good news is, it is trainable. And if you are knowing men that want to become better in this, tell them that it is trainable, that they can develop the skills. We are plastic. Like, there is an old notion that our mind stops growing when we are 25. It's not true. Like, the plasticity, the science has shown that the brain is plastic until years and years and years, up to their 80s. There's still plasticity in the brain, way more than they thought a couple decades ago. So we can learn and we can change. And even if you know a man in their 50s that just wants to understand women better, it's really good to say to them, hey, you can learn how to do this. Let them learn emotional intelligence, let them learn body language, let them learn eye contact, let them learn the female brain and how it works. Let me tell you how blind they are. And to illustrate this, there's actually a book called The Female Brain by a brilliant neuroscientist that goes to the female brain in all of its cycles, as the female goes through many cycles. And the book starts immediately with an amazing research about children 3 years old. And they go into a room, sometimes with their dad, sometimes with their mom. Their parent is kind of alternated, 50-50. And some children are women and some children are men, so little girls, little boys. And it's kind of this muffin experiment, right? So they put a muffin in front of them and they say, if you wait for 10 minutes, you get 2 muffins. But if you already eat the muffin, you get no other muffin, right? So it's the whole research is not about if they eat the muffin or not. The whole research is what are they doing, and actually they're looking at how much are the children emotionally aware of their parents' opinion. And what they see is that women were able to 20 times more seek eye contact with their parents to see if it was allowed to eat the muffin. So they were emotionally scanning and checking if it was allowed. The men completely didn't do that at all. The men, okay, there are a couple of distinctions. I'm very generalizing speaking here, but it's good to have kind of a generalized spectrum. Like, this is one end of the spectrum, this is another end of the spectrum. So the other end of the spectrum, the men, they were not looking at the parents at all. They were eating the muffin or not, didn't care much. They started walking into the room and they started feeling, what's the table made of? Maybe looking under the table, how is this table constructed? Maybe feeling the walls. They were just checking the walls and maybe tick, tick, tick the walls to see if it was a whole wall or an empty wall. They were maybe observing the light and how the light was made. And they didn't give a poop about the, they just didn't give anything about the emotional reaction. It was just feeling the objects and seeing the room. And this was 3 years old, these children, right? You see an incredible difference in how the mind is able to perceive this situation. So women were looking at the parents for recognition or permission to eat the muffin, and were emotionally scanning and looking at the eyes and looking at the facial expression. And the men were just not looking at all, and they just started exploring eating the muffin or not. This illustrates that women are already so much advanced in reading emotions in such a young age. And this illustrates that you're living in a completely different world. Because if you're at 3 years old, already looking in the eyes 20 times more than a man, what happens when you're 20 and you're dating? Or what happens when you're 30 or 50 and you're maybe finding a new partner, or whatever age you are? Like, you are miles ahead if you're already at 3 years old doing that. You're miles and miles ahead when it comes to emotional intelligence. And as soon as I started learning emotional intelligence, my vision was changing, because I was a dude that would be checking the things. I would be something that would check the material, which is also a handy skill, right? Women might not give a damn about what the table is made from. Maybe a little bit, but not so much. The men care about that a lot, which is a useful skill, of course. It's a different occupation of the mind completely. I had such a material, let's call it material occupation of the mind before I started learning emotional intelligence. Now, what happened when I started learning emotional intelligence? My vision opened up to a world that I was not able to see before, literally. And I want to say this to every woman, literally. This is not a metaphor. I didn't see the emotional information inside of a room. But I started understanding by getting more in touch with my own emotions, getting more in touch with how other people are expressing their emotions. Like, there is a lot of emotional information inside of a room, or a club, or a bar, or a beach, or whatever have you, wherever you are, right? There's a lot of emotional information, and you can kind of see who likes who and who doesn't like who, and who's kind of friendly but really doesn't want to be there, and who's kind of attracting and is kind of making signs. You also see, especially when you're sober in a club at night, you see who is absolutely wasted and who is not. You see all of this emotional information. And women, I have the feeling you are living in a world where there's just so much emotional information. And you kind of believe that everyone lives in this world. But men do not live in that world at all. So they don't see it. I didn't see it. And as soon as I started seeing it, I was like, oh my God, I was blind. This reality was completely non-existent in my life. I was blind to this information, and now I can start seeing this information. And probably I'm still miles away from where women are, but I started to be able to touch it. I started to be able to understand this is precious information. Everyone should be able to see this. But I also remembered I was not able to see this at all. Probably a lot of men are not able to see this at all. So what happens, for example, in a club situation? You might have been in a similar situation. Someone comes up to you because he's attracted, but he is not direct. And he's maybe a little bit like, hey, hi, what you're doing, and a little bit like soft questions. He doesn't just say like, hey, you're looking amazing. I feel attracted to you. Yeah, how are you? Are you single? You know, that would be very direct. He might just like, hey, how are you doing? A little bit, and the women is like, oh, okay. He is approaching, which is kind of courageous, which is nice, and I kind of like him, but I don't know if he's direct enough for me to respond. So I will wait a little bit. I will wait a little bit what he's doing. Now that emotional information is in the room, but the man doesn't see that emotional information. He completely moves what is happening in the material field. Now what does he see in the material field? He sees a nice girl and he waits for words to come out of her mouth so that he kind of has feedback. He doesn't see the eye contact, he doesn't see the facial expression, he doesn't see the body language, he doesn't see if the woman leans in or leans out. He doesn't see how the friends are reacting. He's kind of just like a little bit of in a monkey-like state. Like I compare it, me before I was able to see it, to me after I see it, a little bit in a monkey-like state, like, ooh, nice girl, let me say hi. Let me see if she likes me too. But not really seeing it, just waiting until she literally says, oh, I like you. And then I'm like, oh, I like her. I could have seen if she likes me or not 20 minutes earlier in the conversation, but men are blind. I was blind to all of that. So the dude might get a little bit awkward in the example, right? Might get a little bit awkward. And he doesn't know what to say and he gets a little bit insecure. And the woman sees that he's getting insecure, but she also feels the insecurity of him and starts to feel insecure of themselves. So she's like, maybe I just want to go back to my friends. And you kind of signal that to him. And you feel you're clear because you are living in this emotional world. But he doesn't see it, he's completely blind. So you're kind of like, nice to meet you, it was nice. But he doesn't see it and he's just still like, hey, nice girl, I want to meet you. So he kind of pulls you back and says like, hey. And he asks another question and you get maybe a little bit more irritated. And you start to lean a little bit back. But because you are leaning back and he doesn't know, but he feels kind of you're losing attention, he gets in his logical mind, oh, I'm losing attention, maybe I should be a little bit more aggressive in my approach so that we stay connected. And he starts to become a little bit aggressive, not seeing that she is actually moving away. And in so doing, even worsening the situation. The woman thinks she is clear in kind of saying goodbye and kind of turning and kind of moving. But through the man's mind, because he's not seeing the emotional information, he doesn't see it, right? And he might get more aggressive and the women might be thinking, why are you not seeing? Why are you not understanding or seeing that I want to start talking with my friends? You know, shoes off. Go find someone else who likes more awkward and aggressive, go. But you don't want it to come to a moment where you want to slap him off. You would love to, that he understands that it's not the right time, or you want to go back to your friends, and he lets you do that, right? But as he gets more aggressive, you get more aggressive, and at one point, because he completely doesn't see it, you're like, come on, how clear do I need to be? How clear do I need to be? Same thing can happen in a relationship, of course. What would be the alternative of when a man would see it? Now, for example, in the moment where he is a little bit awkward, and she is kind of interested, but also a little bit waiting, he might feel like, oh wow, she's waiting for me to show interest, a little bit more interest, a little bit more deep interest. Not just, hey, you look nice, wanna do something, but more like, who are you as a person? Who are you as a being? What is interested in you? So you might see, if the man would be able to see the emotional response, that she's waiting for you to take another step into the conversation and build a little bit of rapport, a little bit of relation. When you are able to see that, you might engage with a question. Now that question can be welcomed or not welcomed. If it's a little bit too much, you will see that in the facial expression of the woman. The man would be able to see that. And it's like, and he can just correct himself. Oh, I see that was maybe a little bit too deep of a question. I'm sorry. I like, and he can just say, oh, sorry. I like to have deep conversations, but I will back off. We just got to know each other. Wow! What if a man was able to see all of that? And how much more attraction would that be able to create if he was able to see you responding, to then have a question, but then also see that the question was a little bit too much, and then able to back up, create some space, and have a more lighter conversation again. All of a sudden, there is a dance happening between the woman and the man, and because he is emotionally aware, that dance starts to happen. And in the conversation, it might get better and better, and the woman starts to open up a little bit more and starts to like him more, and would love to feel his touch, or would love to receive a hug or a kiss. Now again, if the man is emotionally aware and he starts to see the subtle vibrations and the subtle communications that are happening, he would be able to hug or kiss her at the perfect moment, but also would love to be able to dance and create a little bit of tension before that happens. So he doesn't just bulldoze her in, but he actually waits a little, right? You cannot imagine how much my vision opened when I started seeing this, and like, wow, a completely different reality. So I'm telling you this to clearly illustrate that the men are not able to see your emotional cues. Now, how can you change this? How can you change it? You cannot just give them vision, right? First of all, if a man wants to change this, if he wants, some men don't want, but if he wants, first of all, he will be a better man for women. He will be a man where women would say, "Oh my God, where have you been all my life?" Which is a good thing. But at the same time, he needs to be able to learn. He needs to be able to shift, is open to shift his perspective. If he's not, if he just thinks he's a shit, don't even bother, don't waste your energy. But if he is able to shift his perspective, I would love to share with you how you can communicate with men while they are not able to see the emotional state yet, to still able to communicate clearly without letting it coming to a point where it's just too much, or it's really like you kind of have to be kind of cold and clear, right? I want you to stay in your energy and at the same time be clear to men. So what I would say, if a man is a little bit too not seeing your cues, right? If you notice, oh, he's not seeing any cues that I'm doing, is to talk in a conditional manner. Now what do I mean? And it's a little bit hard sometimes. I'm asking you to step a little bit out of your normal way of communicating. But talk in conditions, because conditions for men are very clear. Hey, if you do this, I am actually feeling that. All right? You can still be in your emotion. But for example, hey, if you're grabbing me by my arm while I am actually backing off, I actually feel threatened. I don't want to feel threatened right now. Because you're in a conditional, talking in a conditional way, you're like, oh wow, this is not what I tried to do. I didn't want to threaten you at all. I thought you were a nice girl, right? But because you're talking conditionally, it can click in his logical mind. So logic is constantly condition. If this, then that. If this, then that. If this, then that. So you might see somebody and you can say like, hey, I see you want to talk with me, but after that you're not saying much. Because you're not saying much, I feel a little bit awkward. Whoa, what an honesty. And you're in with yourself, and you have a if-then sentence. Okay, I just finished the video. I found out that my video stopped in the middle, so I decided to do another take, because I feel it's very important to start talking about how you can communicate to men. Let's also talk about when you're in a relationship. And there is this typical man-female scenario where I also was in before I started understanding this. And that is, the woman is overwhelmed with emotions, and the man comes home and he sees that something is wrong, and he says, "What's wrong?" And you say nothing, or the woman says nothing. And he's like, "I see there is something wrong," so he gets a little bit irritated because he kind of feels you're lying, right? And then he's like, no, it's nothing. And it's like, come on, but you're not in the mood for conversation. And because he completely doesn't see the emotional field, he doesn't understand that you're not in the mood for a conversation. He just sees something is wrong, she's not wanting to tell me, if then again conditional. So how can you talk to him, or in the moment, or after such a moment happens, so that these kind of situations don't happen again? Because most of the time these situations end up in a little bit of irritation, and the man in his logical mind sees there is someone I love, and she's not feeling all right. She deserves to be feeling all right. I want to give her a solution. So his highest love in his logical mind is to give you a solution. But you're not in an emotional state to receive a solution, and he doesn't see the emotional reality that you're like, just need some space, for example, or just needs to have a moment where you can just talk and he just listens without giving you a solution. He doesn't understand that, he doesn't see that, he's literally blind towards that. So his logical mind just wants to give you solutions. But you're not in the mood for solutions, so you get irritated because you just want some space. And he gets irritated because he wants to do something out of love, and he just gets an angry wife in return. And all of a sudden it's fire, and there is a big fire, and with fire I mean like a big discussion or a conflict happening between you, because you simply are not realizing that you're living in completely different worlds, and the world that for you is super obvious is for him a world that he doesn't see. So how can you talk to him in such a situation? Talk again from a conditional way. So, if this, then that. If you see me not feeling well and I say nothing, I'm not talking the truth, I just need some space. Right? The solutions will come later. At that moment, I'm not able to handle a solution, I just need to process my emotions. Or, in such moments, I don't want a solution, but it would be amazing if you just could listen to me, so I can process my emotions. All of a sudden, it's like, oh, so if she is feeling like that and she says nothing, I just need to be a space of listening, or need to give her space. That's it. If you're able to communicate that in a conditional way, he's able with his logical mind to understand that, and it might only need one conversation, and such moments will never happen again, because you were enabling the both of you to understand a little bit of the man's mind, to understand that he's blind to the emotional spectrum and that his mind works in logic. So you were able to somehow bring logic into a conversation that has a desirable outcome of whenever else you have an overwhelm of emotion, he will not throw solutions at you, but he will become a beautiful listening space. Amazing! So it has a lot of beautiful implications, actually, knowing men are blind, right? So I hope this helped a little bit. I hope this conversation is a little bit of service to you, because for me it helped so much to understand the women's mind. It must also help so much that you have a little look into the man's mind. And I've studied almost 10 years by now this topic, and I started realizing as soon as I started to become a man, that was being able to listen to emotions, that was be able to see a little bit of the world that you're living in. I'm not saying I'm seeing all of it, definitely not, but I'm seeing more than average. I started realizing I was blind. I also started realizing it's beautiful to see this world of emotion happening. I also started realizing it was actually the key for people to feel safe and secure and attracted to me. And I started to become a space where some of my friends started really saying, man, every time I'm with you I feel like I'm home, or every time I'm with you I feel supported, I feel seen, I feel respected, I feel valued for who I am. Wow, what an incredible compliments those were. Especially because a couple years before that I was just a struggling, not knowing what to do, logical man, doing all the things that I'm talking about, not understanding emotional cues, kind of asking for more attention while the person doesn't want to give me attention, or wanting to give the solution while she needs some space. I was that man. I felt the pain of also not understanding it. I felt the pain as a man of not seeing it. And it's such a liberation to be in a space where you allow yourself to feel it, to have emotional intelligence, for the both, for a man and woman. And even if you're into the same sexes, even then there will always be someone who is a little bit more of feminine nature and a little bit more masculine nature, and the same elements apply here. So let me know if this was of any help or benefit, and if that shed a light a little bit on what is going on in our minds. For me, this is an absolutely fascinating topic. I also will do a video that will be more directed to men, but most of my audience at the moment is female. So women go first, you go first. I would love to also, if you know someone who wants to learn a little bit more in this, I would love to give a video to him that you can just give and say, hey, watch this. It will be easy. It will make your life a lot easier, and I'm all about making your life a lot easier. So thank you so much. My name is Elisa. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye-bye.